All right, so elasticity. Elasticity is a way of measure how responsive demand and supply is to price change. Okay, and from that, now the reason why we care about that is it gives us some insight to well one preference and also to the industry, right? How responsive, how responsive to price an industry or an individual is, right? And we need this insight because these systems, right, the market, right, or the supply chain, right, is really complex. Now, when we talk about elasticity, what we talk about, what we care about, is the magnitude of elasticity. So we always talk about the absolute value of elasticity, and if the absolute value of the elasticity is greater than one, right, we call that elastic. Okay, so that would be, we would say that's an elastic good. Elastic good is when price change, the quantity demanded can change by a more, right, by a bigger magnitude. Okay, now what if about elasticity that is less than one? Well, then we say those goods are inelastic. Right? And the way we're going to use it is just a way of describing goods. Right? Is a good elastic or is a good inelastic? All right. You can, so for example, right, things that are luxury goods like sports cars and such, right, those are typically elastic goods, right, because when the prices goes up, right, people, or luxury cruises, right, when prices go up, well, people don't have to, right, because they're luxury goods. By definition, you don't need them, and so prices goes up, people decrease their consumption. Whereas inelastic goods are necessities, right? So think food, right? When price of food goes up, you can't, right? You still have to eat, right? So you don't change your demand, right? Because of price, right? So you just end up giving up other things, well, like luxury goods, right? And so we could say, so food, right? Things that are necessities, right? We call those those goods are typically inelastic, right? Things that we can give up, things that people can do without, we call those elastic goods. Okay, all right. All right. Now, price elasticity, aka demand elasticity, right? There's the definition: percent change in quantity demanded for every 1% change in price. Here, so the mathematical formula we can be written like this: percent change. So this is the triangle is Greek delta, right, and it represents change in math. Right? Percent change in quantity demanded, QD, okay, over percent change in price. Don't worry, this is not a micro class. I'm never going to ask you to calculate elasticity, okay? But we just have to learn how to use it and what it means. Right? So, for example, right, let's say that for a particular good, rice, right? So for rice, right, the elasticity equals negative 0.0.2. Okay, how do I use that? Well, suppose I want to know, right, when price, right, increase by, when price increase by 3%, right, then how much does quantity demand change? Okay, all right, how do I figure that out? Using elasticity. Here, I'll do, well, pricing, so 3%, right, this is the price increase, times negative 0.2, so that's my elasticity, equals, right, and then we'll just put that in the, it's just multiply directly across 3 times 0.2, or negative 0.2, right? Then I mean negative 0.6%. Okay, so the outcome is always percent, so this is a quantity demand change. Right, so that means when price goes up by 3%, right, quantity demanded, right, decrease by, right, by 0.6%. Okay, all right, and you see how, so, yeah, I don't know what the elasticity, what the actual elasticity of rice is, but rice, is a necessity, right, for most, in most regions, and so you can expect that rice is going to be very inelastic. So price is going up by 3%, but quantity demanded only goes down by 0.6%. Okay, all right. Supply elasticity. So supply elasticity is using this symbol eta, Okay, and by definition is the percent change in quantity supplied over the percent change in price. Okay, we're going to use it similarly, right? So for example, right, let's say eta equals eta is equals for supply elasticity. Now supply elasticity is always positive. Why? Because the law of supply. As price goes up, we expect quantity supply to increase, right? Consumers, oh sorry, not consumers, producers want to make more money, right? And so let's say that a supply elasticity is 1.2 for a particular good. For example, let's say that this is an iPhone, right? And so then when price increase by 2%, right? Then quantity supply, right? Increase by okay, and then so we can do this. You can say 2% times 1.2, so that's the price increase, and then here is my supply elasticity, and it equals, right? So 2% times 1.2, and it equals 2.4, right? 2.4%. Okay, so increase by 2.4%. Okay, all right. Now, why is this important? Well, we have a basic assumption about producers or suppliers. Right? Suppliers want to make money; they want to make profit. So when price goes up, their incentive is to produce more to capture that added revenue. Right? And so by monitoring, right, by observing the supply elasticity, we can have a glimpse on how responsive the supply chain is. Right? And so if here, let's make a note here, right? If the elasticity is or the supply is elastic, right? Then that means the supply or production, I should say, so production is flexible, right? Suppliers, they can increase production or decrease production, right, without much issue. However, if elasticity is inelastic, right, what does that mean? That means production has a bottleneck, or there's issues, right? Production, right, or production has barrier, right? Because they want to make money. If the price goes up, right, why aren't they producing? Why aren't they producing more, right? And that gives us an indicator, right, to where to look at, right, if there's an issue, right? So we'll talk about more. We'll talk more about supply elasticity when we talk about agriculture, right? So supply elasticity is a good way. It's a pretty good way for us to understand if there's any issues in our global food supply chain. Okay. Finally, one last elasticity that we're going to mention is income elasticity. So income elasticity, the definition is the percent change in quantity demanded over the percent change in income. Right? I should say income here. Okay, so this is trying to measure as an individual's income goes up, right? Then do they demand more or less, right, of a particular good? Right? Now we can break down income elasticity into two main categories. So income elasticity, and go down this way. Okay, so income elasticity could be greater than zero, so meaning positive. Okay, so that means as your income goes up, you spend more on those goods. Now we call these goods normal goods. Right? So these are normal goods. So you can think like automobile, right? When you're poor, right? When you're poor, your automobile is really cheap, right? My first car was $500, right? But now, I got a little bit more money, right? So I spend a little bit more on cars, housing, clothing, right? So you spend your spending, right? Your spending increases, right? So these are normal goods. Okay. Now, what if the income elasticity is negative? Is less than zero, right? So we call these inferior goods. Right? That means as your income goes up, you actually purchase less of that. So the typical example is like chicken, right? Or cheap meat, chicken or spam or bologna, right? If your income goes up, so when you're poor, you spend more money on chicken, but then as your income goes up, right? As your income goes up, right, people switch away from chicken and then they spend more money on beef, so their spending on chicken goes down, right? Or things like grits, right? Although I think grits is making a comeback, though people are paying a lot of money for grits now, right? Okay, so those are normal goods and inferior goods. Okay, now we can go down a little bit further, right? In among normal goods, if the income elasticity is greater than one, right, we actually call that luxury goods. Okay, so that means your income goes up, and then your quantity demanded for that good increases disproportionately. So it goes up more than 1%. Okay, and so this is the definition of luxury good. Right. So you can think of a luxury vacation. Right. When you're poor, when you're low or middle income, you take no vacation. Right. But then once your income reaches a certain level, as your income goes up, right, then you have a dramatic increase in these luxury purchases, right, because you have all your necessities, right, settled. Right. Okay. So those are luxury goods. Now we'll talk more about income. We'll use income elasticity to try to explain consumer preference on environmental quality. So those will come later on in like chapter 12. Okay. Right. So and that's it. That's all we're going to say about elasticity. We're not going to talk about cross price elasticity. Where we talk about substitutes or complements. Okay. And that's all.